Welcome back to Bioli Talks. Today my guest is a very interesting person who in 2000 went to the United States to study, just like I did actually. He introduced Georgia to several famous American TV formats. And our conversation came out very interesting and inspiring. So let me introduce to you David Gogichaishvili. Welcome to Bioli, my friend. Well, I know you've been to Bioli, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. Its founder, Tamas Chedlidze, basically, his dream was, it still is, to create a Georgian wellness. Sure. Like a different kind of wellness from the rest of the world. It will be Georgian wellness, so that's why it's called Bioli Wellness Resort, and it's the only wellness resort in Georgia. And we have a botanist go around the country. They, gather all these herbs and berries and all kinds of stuff. And most of those are used in our treatments and also in our food and drinks. And here is one of the best examples. Bioli tea is based on Georgian berries. And I would like you to...
Now, Bioli is the name of the place, or it's abbreviation or something?
No, it's just a name, Tamas. When he started Bioli, he was thinking about name, and name had to include something bio. And so he was walking around Bioli.
So that's the first part of the name.
Yeah, and then it came up with Bioli. Okay. So Bioli is just a very unique name. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just a name of the place. So
very
welcome,
nice place. Thanks a lot for hosting me here.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for your time. And let's start our interview. It's a conversation. I always tell my guests, it's not a regular interview, just a conversation. We're just having a conversation.
Between two people.
Yes, and the fire.
Yeah.
And let's start. Where were you born?
I was born in Georgia, in Tbilisi, Georgia. Originally, my last name is coming from the western part of Georgia, the region called Guria, Georgia. Yes. And you know those
of course
parts where you have different, even subcultural characterizations of people. You can differentiate people from Guria, from all the other parts of Georgia.
Yes, sure you can.
But yeah, I was born in Tbilisi, Georgia, but I would go there every summer. We have a house in Guria, and that was my favorite part of the childhood. And now, luckily, it's the favorite part of my son's childhood, because we go to the
Koreans. I've had experience. I worked with much Korean for a long time, and I was just going with him in Korea and meeting friends. And I'm sure the biggest part of your great sense of humor comes from Korea.
Well, people say that. I have a hypothesis of how close Korean traditions are to the Western civilization,
Nice.
Democracy, concept of democracy, and...
Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, how much time do we have? Korean Republic is the historic fact, even though it didn't last pretty long, but
yes.
We used to have a Korean Republic. I think 1900s was the period where we have democratic elections. I think that was the period where we had women participate in not only in the elections but in government
daily life and
processes. Yeah. So a lot of similarities and parallels to the Western
nice
civilization.
Well, it's great. Segue to the real democracy. I don't know about that now, but well, you worked and lived for a long time in the United States.
Yes.
How did that experience shape you as a person and a professional?
Well, any place would shape your personality. Surroundings do that, right? Yes. We are what we are, and we are who we are because of the surroundings that we're in. So no matter where you go, no matter what you do, whatever you do and wherever you are shapes your personality, both personally and professionally, of course. And I got lucky because I had an opportunity of living, studying and working and living in the United States, because that culture, your question is philosophical because that's actually the topic that I'm in management mostly interested in, how cultures influence people.
Yes.
Not only national cultures, but also organizational cultures. You know, people from a certain organizations would have different set of beliefs and value systems and behaviors rather than comparing with other organizations. Right. So when we talk about American culture per se, yeah, it does influence. But my take on cultural differences is that we human beings have a lot more similarities than differences. A lot of research has been done, a lot of practices have been shared, a lot of videos and a lot of materials you can find about how different we people are.
Right.
But those are, you know, on the surface. Basic human values are universal. The ways we express those values are different.
Well, you and I were same generation, and when did you go to America? What year?
It was back in 2000.
Yeah, same, 2000.
Yeah.
I went to America 2000, and same year. And so we left our country in ruins. You know, it was incredibly bad time, turmoil, mafia, everything bad you can imagine was going on here. And we go to United States, which was way different than it is today.
Sure.
Very different country.
Sure.
What were some of the cultural shocks you remember when you arrived in the United States from Georgia?
Well, see, even though I was born and raised in Georgia, the American culture was not alien to me because of the books that I've been reading, because of the Hollywood movies that I've been watching, because of my personal and my friends' aspirations to the American culture. So it was not actually the culture shocks. Some of the things that you would be surprised that, you know, this culture is this way and that culture is that way. Of course, again, we can talk a lot about cultural differences, but even though I had not been to the United States before, there was nothing much that I got.
Yeah, you're right. We watched the Hollywood movies, like smuggled videotapes.
Yeah, not only that, but I think it all comes down to the aspirations. For instance, you can mention, for instance, that in the student life, you eat alone, you know, quite often.
Yes.
Because you don't really have time for that you can afford to, you know, gather with your friends or the family members and have the ritual of a dinner. Right. Which is not the case in Georgia, even though we were not that affluent, you know, to afford dinner every day. But that ritual, that tradition was still in place, right? Whereas in the U.S., you know, you have a lecture, and then you have to go. Then you need to go to the library. Then you need to go to someplace else, and then you just realize that, oh, I haven't had any breakfast today. So you know, you go to a restaurant. So that might be the illustrations of you know, cultural differences, because it. For instance, for my not American friends, it was a strange phenomenon. And we were talking about that. To eat alone was like something strange for them.
Yes.
But given the circumstances, you know,
I had the same things happen. Well, when I started, I was also a student in Seattle, Washington, and you know, I think the first time I went to cafeteria, and two of my classmates came with me, and I asked them, "What are you getting?" And they said, "Well, pizza." And I paid for everyone's pizza.
Yeah, that's
and
another.
Like,
that's
why did
another.
you pay?
Why would you pay?
And I was so surprised. Why wouldn't I pay?
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, those little kind of differences. But you learn, and then you go, and at the end of the day, you're right. You know, we are still human and living on the same planet, and we have.
Which is also different, you know, depending on which part of the United States you go to.
Oh, for sure.
That's a completely different story.
Where did you start?
I started in Athens, Ohio, a tiny little place in southeastern part of Ohio, a small college town where Ohio University was. Then I moved to Washington, D.C., then I moved to New York City. So, you know, three completely different worlds.
Yeah, I started in Seattle, Washington, and then moved to Orlando, Florida. Okay. That's different.
Oh, that's different.
That's like very different.
Another planet, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like different poles. But yeah, you were involved in several major projects and media initiatives, which were all based on American formats.
Yes.
How challenging was to adopt those formats for Georgian audience?
Oh, it was challenging. It was actually even more challenging than regular ways of adapting the formats, because what's a regular way? You take a situation comedy, you take the late night comedy talk show, you take like business reality format, and then, for instance, in case of the situation comedy, you adapt the script, you adapt the characters, you adapt everything, so that it could be understandable and acceptable for the local culture.
Right.
That's a regular way of doing things. For instance, there's a lot of, you know, examples of the American sitcoms that have been adapted to other countries. That's the way they do it.
Yeah.
We said, okay, that's you know, as they say in physics, that's necessary but not sufficient. We said that, you know, adapting the humor, which is so subtle, and diluted to the local culture. We said, okay, we're going to need to develop the Georgian characters rather than adopting the characters, right? Yeah. So we learned the whole process, how to produce, how to record it, whether or not it should be a multi-camera or single camera, how to write the script, how to do the, you know, mathematics of the script, how to develop the storylines, A storyline, B storyline, C storyline, how to do the overlaps. We learned everything about the production process, but then we were saying to our, you know, consultants and friends, which were, you know, high-ranked producers and writers of the American famous sitcoms, that we wanted to develop the Georgian characters, not adapting per se, but adapting the Georgian characters. One of the most successful was the Shua Kalakshi.
You guys did a great job.
People still think it's the Georgian version of Friends or any sitcom, but it is the Georgian version. But it's based on the Georgian situations, Georgian characters, and Georgian storylines. Yes, right.
It was a great decision, and you know what I like about what you did in the beginning, choosing completely unknown people.
Oh yeah,
I mean, even today, not many.
That's
people
actually
do
the
that.
American way as well. By the way, in Hollywood, there's like two schools of thought. Like which movie is gonna be more successful? The one in which you have the famous actors, like Hollywood A-class actors, or is it that the screenplay, which is more important? So these are two different schools of thought. So we say that, you know, the screenplay is important.
Well, let's go back to the interview. And you had working experience in both American and Georgian media environments.
Yes.
How do you think they're different in terms of ethics, freedom of speech, and creative freedom?
Well, stereotypically speaking, Americans know the value of time better than Georgians.
Yes.
But again, that's stereotypical, you know. For instance, when I came here to you, you were ready at the setup time, which is not so Georgian, you know.
Well, yes.
That's, you know, the time orientation is one thing that affects the working culture,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I agree.
And also blaming yourself versus blaming others. When something goes wrong, stereotypically speaking, a typical Georgian, not you and I, but a typical Georgian would blame this to someone else.
Boss,
or to the environment. The boss is my favorite example.
I know it is, that's why I said.
Do we have to say it? In Georgian language, how language depicts the cultural values. Blaming to others. In Georgian language, we say, in English we say, I'm late because I missed the bus.
Yes.
So it's my own responsibility that I'm late. So I'm late because it was me who's to blame, right? In Georgian language, we say I'm late because avtobusma gamastro, which means the literal translation. Right. Bus was too fast to be caught.
Right.
So that's. And again, how much time do we have? We can talk a lot about that.
I know.
But when we talk about the cultural differences in a larger context, I think it's individual, what matters within the culture. We can characterize the cultures, but we can't generalize it to everyone. No, I think that's a mistake. I think there are very creative and very disciplined and very time-oriented Georgian media managers. And even in the US, you would have a lot of media managers who are worse than Georgians in that particular direction.
And, you know, speaking of Georgians, how do you think Americans perceive Georgians today, and how that perception changed over the years?
Well, in the past, they didn't really know anything about Georgia, right? Unless you are familiar with some of the political things in this region, you wouldn't really know anything about Georgia. You would consider that to be a part of Russia. You would not even imagine that Georgians would speak a different language from Russian. So you wouldn't really differentiate it. You wouldn't really consider Georgia to be a separate part of the Soviet Union.
Right.
But of course now it's changing, which is nice. I think even in the streets of New York, if you ask any random American, which is actually hard to find in New York, especially, it's hard to find an American. They would say that we know about Georgia, we know about culture. We know about the recent developments in Georgia and Georgia's aspirations to the Euro-Atlantic aspirations. So Georgia trying to...
Who's looking? Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Yeah. which is you know, nice.
Again, you know, like for example, from my experience, when you talk to Americans, like for example, you know, I have been researching Alexander Kartveli's life.
Oh yeah, you're doing a very important job.
Thank you. But what I mean, and I appreciate your comment. What I mean is, when I started in 2005, which is 20 years now, researching when I would go to the museums, like the Smithsonian Museum, Air and Space Museum, or the Hazy and Dallas Airport, whatever, there was nothing about Kartveli, nothing about Kartveli's aircraft, nothing. Today, after 20 years, and I have a great friend, Richard Rubin, who is helping me, and he spent a lot of money popularizing Kartveli. And today, I'm very proud that when I go to those museums, at least 2 of the models of Kartveli-made planes are sold everywhere. There's some books mentioning Kartveli. So, reason I'm saying that is when you have something, story like the other one I'm working at, Chuck Rullo and the space, when you have a Georgian story related to American history,
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference.
Sure.
When you tell Americans that,
Sure.
hey, listen, Alexander Kartveli, who created your airplanes, wasn't Russian, he was
Sure.
Georgian.
Sure.
Or, you know, NASA kicked out Russian song and sent Georgian song to space.
Sure.
Then America listens more. Goes, oh wow, now you're my guy.
Yeah, we can have a few successful Georgians examples that you know, made a career in the United States.
Yes.
And did a lot of things that the United States benefited from. There was one day actually in Athens, Ohio, I would never forget. I met 2 new people that very day. One of them told me that, you know, I was asking, do you know about Georgia, anything about Georgia? It's in Europe. And, and he was saying, oh, Europe, isn't that Italy?
Oh.
And I was like, I'm serious. I'm not joking about it.
Just Italy?
Yeah. Isn't that Italy?
Okay, there you go.
And then I asked, have you been abroad?
No, right?
No. He said, I've been down to Florida.
Great.
So for him, I mean, he didn't have the higher education, and there's a lot of talk about the challenges of the American educational system, especially the elementary education. American education is the greatest in the world, but the master's degree, the doctorates, PhD, and that's the greatest. But when you the high school is horrible.
Yes.
He said, I've been down to Florida. And the second guy that I met that very day, that's why I just remembered that day, was a fan of, he was a music, we talked about music a lot, and he knew about the Rustavi ensemble.
What?
And I was like, wow, I don't know about those guys as much as you do. And he was like, he named all of those songs, and he showed me the recordings of them, and he was crazy about Georgian polyphony, and I was like, wow. And both of them are Americans. So how could you generalize?
That's America.
That's America.
I had the same thing happen. I was in Orlando, Florida. I flew back to Seattle, Washington, and I got to school because I had an overnight flight, and I'm like really tired. And one of the girls at school said, "What's wrong? What's wrong with you?" I'm so tired. I had a 6-hour flight. Because where did you come from? I said, Orlando, Florida. Because America's that big? 6-hour flight?
Right.
I know, there's a map over there.
You can see
you can look at it,
the map.
Measure or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
Media and Georgian-American relationships. How do you think, can you think that media can actually influence Georgian-American relationships, or it's mostly driven by politics? What do you think?
I think both. How much time? You're asking difficult questions. How much time do we have?
Anytime you want. I can do 2-part interview if you want.
I'm a follower of classic Lazarfield, James Carey, and others' theories about the role of the media, not only in terms of the perception, but in terms of the behavior change.
Right.
Stating that the media's influence is only indirect. it's not the direct influence. A lot of politicians think that if they have the media, if they hold the media outlets, they would have the propaganda,
right,
and then they would influence the voters' behavior, which is, according to the beliefs that I'm following, is not true. It only reflects the reality.
Yes.
And the influence is more if it reflects well. So it's indirect. Of course, it's driven by politics. The relationships of two countries is driven by politics, and then the media comes into play. Even in the United States, you can have different media outlets. For instance, CNN would be pro-democratic, and the Fox would be too far the right wing. So it's hard to say, but if we talk general about it, yes, the media is important, of course, but it doesn't directly influence.
And speaking of influence, and you mentioned you started in Ohio, and you were talking to people what they knew about Georgia and everything. And I've done the same thing and researched everything. At the end of the day, that's called public diplomacy. And what do you think of how important public diplomacy is, especially today?
You're my friend, and I don't really want to tell you stories that serve my showing off here.
Please do.
But but there's a guy in Ohio who used to call me a public diplomat. For some reason.
They call me the same thing.
Yeah, his reason was that he was saying to me that you're only foreigner that I know who is not telling me stories about his own culture, but he's asking me questions about my own. Exactly. So I was actually asking him a lot of questions about American culture, because his culture was the rural culture, which is so different world, because we know America we know America from academic world, academic America, right? Great universities, great think tanks, great academic institutions. We know like corporate America, right? A lot of great examples of brilliant management and brilliant people and Wall Street and all that. But we know so little about real America. That's the
what
real
I always
America.
say. Yeah. That's the real.
And he was the guy I met him at he was actually a middle-level manager at the used furniture department store. And I, as a student, didn't have a lot of money, so I had to buy some parts of the furniture in the old furniture shop.
Goodwill shops and everything.
Roy, his name was Roy, and he used to live in Jacksonville, Ohio, which is a village. And we're talking about the poor.
Yes, I've met so many of those people, and you're right. It's much more interesting to talk to those people, because they tell you more stories about true America.
Yeah, this is the real America. Yeah. You know how I met Roy? I asked him for direction in the streets of Athens.
He was very nice. Right?
He came with me.
Yes.
And showed me the spot, which is not going to happen in New York or any other metropolitan areas. Yeah, exactly.
I've met so many Americans. They're so helpful. Especially, I have so many, as I'm sure you have, so many American friends who consider me as a family member. They would invite me to a Thanksgiving dinner in their house, which is such a nice thing, and it's such a great honor from American. So I always tell people here, when you talk about the United States or Americans,
go to Midwest or go to Nebraska or go to Alabama.
Mostly, like people is talking bad stuff about America. They've never been to America,
right? Yeah.
And they're just watching some. Whatever. Well, let's say you meet American who has never heard of Georgia, which I'm sure you met many times. How would you describe Georgia in one sentence? What would you say?
Oh, that's a hard job. Creative people having aspirations of getting back to our family, which is the European community.
Nice. Perfect, actually.
I think that's like the two most important characteristics of our country.
Yes, it is. And wow, nice. And you've been affiliated with comedy most of your life. And I would say your comedy is academic comedy. It's smart comedy, which most of them today lack. We have a problem with comedy in Georgia right now. And I love comedy. I love American comedy.
I know you do.
I
know your favorite stand-up comedians as well.
Yeah. And so how do you think comedy and satire today can change the world?
Well, there's also statistics about that. If you take the elections of, I believe that was the Bush-Al Gore elections,
right,
where Jon Stewart, the host of the Daily Show, which is a Comedy Central.
He came back recently.
He did, but during that year, he became the most reputable, or there was an award that he got. When you think about it, the news programs had to get that award. But the comedy program depicted the pre-election process more vividly and more academically or more naturally than those news programs.
And it's still going on now.
Well, he then became a member of the Democratic Party, and well, he went into politics, which was, I believe, the mistake.
Exactly.
And now he's getting back to the television program.
Yeah, today.
So comedy, this is the example how important the comedy is.
Right.
But when we talk about comedy, we have to define what is comedy first. It's not like making fun of people.
No.
It's the non-traditional links to the things and phenomena.
Yes.
Which is then becoming funny. And not like the physical humor, you know? Not like making fun of someone. It's those, links. It's those somehow parallels between the two things or two people or two phenomena which you would never see that way, yeah. The
Jerry
comedians
Seinfeld is a perfect
well, of course, a lot of examples.
A lot of them, but just I saw the And so, who's your favorite comedian?
How much time do we have? My inspiration of the late night talk show comedy format was Johnny Carson.
Obviously.
Which is actually, the king of the late night.
The king, yes. The big one.
For 30 years, he was the king of the format.
Yeah,
back from 1962 to 1992 or 3, right?
30 years, yeah.
30 years, right.
Johnny Carson, I mean...
and he's not that popular, even with Americans now.
Now, yeah.
If they know classic old television, they would know Johnny Carson, of course. But right now, you would be talking about David Letterman and Jay Leno and Craig Ferguson and Conan O'Brien, Jimmy Kimmel, etc. That very format, which Johnny Carson pioneered in, kind of changed nowadays in ways that we wouldn't desire.
I remember, and I'm sure you've seen it. Remember last time he appeared on Letterman show, Johnny Carson?
Sure.
I've seen
a lot of.
That tells you how big he was. I mean, he came out, he couldn't say anything. He just sat down for 1 minute, and it was huge, standing ovation. He just left. He was huge.
There's a joke delivered by him on the farewell show back in 1992. So this is the last show, right?
Show, I've seen it, yeah.
He said something like, there's an interesting statistics in the world now. When I started this show back in 1962, he said, the population of the planet Earth was 6 billion people. Now, when I'm doing my farewell show, the population of the Earth is 7 billion. So that would give you a net increase 1 billion people. And he added then, another statistics say that half of those 1 billion people have their own late night talk shows now.
Yeah,
so he was saying, I was the only one who started off
exactly.
the show, but right now everyone has it.
Do you think the rise of digital media can change the future of late night shows as they exist?
Of course it did already, because when you do political jokes meaning that referring to some political events, right? And for instance, when I was doing this show, when I was doing the format in Georgia, so something happens and then on Tuesday you have a show, right? We didn't have Facebook or Instagram or Twitter back then.
Yeah.
So the joke would be funny if something happens on Friday and you joke about it on Tuesday.
That was new, yeah.
But right now, whenever something happens, someone will post something on Facebook which would be even funnier than you or your writers would think of the jokes, and it would be right then. So the social media is the greatest thing we developed. But on the other hand, you know, taking the format of the late night talk shows, no, you have to do it differently now.
Yes,
and it did change. I mean, those formats. I'm not sure about Georgia. I can't really discuss, you know, because I don't watch those formats. But in the U.S., these formats now are so different from the classic, even Jay Leno, Letterman formats. Yes. So different now.
I watch like every morning. This morning I started watching Jimmy Kimmel's monologue, right? Online, obviously. And then, as you said, before I would wait for Jimmy Kimmel or anyone else, Leno or Letterman, to joke about something, right? New. Right. Today I'm waiting for Jimmy Kimmel, what he's gonna say about what Trump said yesterday, because I know already.
That's the difference, right?
And so, know it. Yeah, it's totally different world.
Yeah.
And
but going back to your question, yes, it has an influence on even political affairs, the comedy per se. But in terms of format, yes, it did change over the time because of the technological developments. You know, even the culture of watching television has changed, right? The Netflix was a game changer, of course.
Yes, of course.
Not only the social media per se, but the Netflix and other businesses like that.
That's the even bigger subject. Yeah.
Right. For instance, the House of Cards. For instance, when we were waiting for Thursday to watch Friends, right? So that was our behavior, that was our culture of watching television. Well, oh my God, it's Thursday, I'm gonna watch Friends, right? Right now, you have like, here's all the episodes of the House of Cards, watch wherever you want, whenever you want, whatever you want. So that changes the whole culture.
And speaking of change, well, recently you've been mentoring young leaders, young managers here in Georgia, and I'm sure, and I know your lectures and your training sessions are very popular here. What leadership qualities do you think the future Georgian leaders should have?
not specifically the young leaders. This is the course of people management, which is a part of the post-executive education and development. So these are the leaders and managers who are either upper level or middle level managers. I think what we lack, which is true about all the leaders across the globe, is the active listening skills. I think that would be if not the most important, at least one of the most important feature of a leader.
Right.
Because what happens is they're not teaching leadership skills. Anyway, we're not taught leadership skills.
No,
you know,
we're not.
When we're junior in the organization, we know how to do the job because we're taught, right? The universities provide that type of an education. And then when we get promoted to the middle level, yes, we have to lead other people. We have to take care of the people that do the job. We don't actually do the job anymore, but we have to take care of people who do the job, right?
Right.
But the middle level is the most important management position.
I agree. Yeah.
I believe even more important than the upper level, because you have to be strategic as well as specific. So you have to understand the job and people that are doing the things that you used to do before promoting, and you have to understand the company perspective as well. And again, nobody teaches us how to do it, how to lead, how to listen well. Nobody teaches us.
No, you're right. That's
And leaders are, always a student. It's not like I know everything and here's how you do it. Here's how you do it. It's not the managerial jobs. Yes. Leadership is different. So listening, and there's a Stephen Covey quote, which is my favorite about listening skills. We don't listen to understand. We listen to reply. And that's true in most of the cases.
Yes, yeah. That's so true.
So you don't really have the pre-assumption of understanding, if and given the decision-making biases, we tend to have the confirmation bias, right? From the outside world, we don't really seek the new information.
No.
Rather, we seek something that is in line with what we already believe.
Exactly.
So the reflection is what we seek, not the new one.
Right, and then when you tell someone something, especially here, and you can tell in their eyes that they're listening to you and already building an answer.
The answer to it, yeah.
Yeah.
We all do that, yeah. But for the leader, I think it's the most important feature and characteristic, which can be learned, of course. It's a skill. The leadership is a skill. It can be learned, but given the education systems, Georgia, America, Japanese, don't really provide. We don't really teach people how to lead, how to listen, and how to lead.
Well, speaking of management or leaders, today one of the most talked about subjects is AI, artificial intelligence, and rightfully so. It's becoming a huge part of our lives. For you, is it a new and effective tool or some sort of a problem?
Both of them. Of course, you can make your life easier with the help of the AI tools. We all do the ChatGPT interactions, and it's brilliant. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
But on the other hand, however, it's creating some, philosophical and existential thoughts in our minds. If you're asking me personally, what we call the artificial intelligence, to me, is not the artificial intelligence. It's just the supercomputers with tremendous computing abilities, which is, again, incredible, extraordinary, and great. But the artificial intelligence,
we're still not there. Yeah,
we're still not there. No. So I'm not afraid yet. I would be afraid if my ChatGPT application will be talking with your ChatGPT application using the language we wouldn't understand, making decisions we wouldn't understand.
We're not that far from there.
I know, but we're not there yet. Then I would call it the artificial intelligence, that when they would create something, that we would based on the decisions and based on the data they would have, then it's the intelligence. Right now, we are commanding. I mean, we're in control. We are commanding. We're buying tickets. So it's not the intelligence. It's the great computers.
Yes.
Okay. You know what I mean?
It's I know exactly what you mean. And I was just listening to this about ChatGPT, and that this person was saying that ChatGPT 3.5 and ChatGPT 4. ChatGPT 4 has 10 times more intelligence than ChatGPT 3.5. And the IQ level of 4 is 155, which is close to 160 was Einstein, which was the smartest man in the world. So if that continues, ChatGPT 5 will have 10 times more IQ, which gets you to 1600. And that's, I think, we're in trouble.
I got the idea, but if it didn't create something on its own, to me, it's not the intelligence.
No, I understand, and I think we're going there.
Probably, yes, probably.
Yeah, and the last question: what legacy would David Gogichaishvili would like to leave here in Georgia?
Oh, the philosophical question again.
Well, I'm talking to you. What would you expect?
I don't know.
Well, what would you like?
Like after my death, right?
Well,
what legacy? When we say legacy, we mean in 100 years.
How would you do like Georgians to talk about you? Let's say like
Nicholas used to have a good father. That would be the legacy that I would love to. For instance, people recognize me in the street in different ways, right? Yeah. People say that, oh, this is the guy who used to be on television, used to host popular programs, and he was on screen. Or they might say, oh, this is the guy who created sitcoms and business realities and their own entertainment television channels. People would say, oh, this is the guy who created some drama series as well. Right now, they would say that, oh, his lecture, I enjoy his video lectures. But one day, Nicholas, my son, who's 17 now, but he was like 7 or 8 at the time. So I'm taking him to the school, and his classmates or schoolmates, all of a sudden, I just overheard them that they were saying to each other, oh, look at him, he's Nicholas's father. Yes. And I was like, wow, they don't know anything rather than me being his father, and I enjoy that so much.
It's a great film.
Yeah.
It's a great film. I had the same thing.
Said, wow.
Last November I was in New York, and my son asked me, he says, my friends would like to meet you. Yeah. And I took them to the restaurant, and they said, we're honored to meet Otto's father.
Yeah, that's the nicest feeling, isn't it?
Yes, it's perfect. It's great. And well, my friend, thank you very much for your time.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm not sure how I helped with your format, because
it was perfect.
Yeah.
Well, at the end, the audience will decide, but I'm sure they will do this one.
Sure.
Thank you.
Looking forward.